Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to the Football Diary podcast. Back again after an international break, which is always difficult for podcasters to talk through. Thank you for persisting with us as we try to talk about England's fortunes. Back to Premier League action today, and thankfully plenty of it to talk through. And yet another red card discussion in the Premier League where we've got some inconsistencies from referees to talk through, which have affected two sides in the Premier League and the title race as well, as Arsenal found out to their cost, losing to Bournemouth 2-0. Thanks to, I think it's fair to say, Dave, a pretty conclusive red card for William Saliba, which killed the game off as a contest, really. And fair play to Bournemouth, who we'll talk about in a moment. But it's another red card for Arsenal that's affected their game. And it's been a difficult season for Arsenal on the discipline front, hasn't it, so far? I mean, we've obviously got those 2 yellow cards for kicking the ball away a couple of times this season, which just seems needless, doesn't it? And then this from Saliba as the last man, getting a red card for something so early in the game seems like they've got a discipline issue, doesn't it? Do you think that's the case so far?
I don't know whether it's the case for me. I mean, I think if you look at this particular instance, it was very unlike, I think, Saliba to really make that sort of decision. And I think if you look at it, Leandro Trossard, it's a terrible. But I don't even know what it is. It's not a back pass of sorts. It looked like it was caught in two minds what to do at that time. And then it's very instinctive, isn't it, from Saliba, and he makes a rash decision when he probably could have bailed himself out in turn. I think you look at his pace. I think he's got the recovery pace to get back in there and get his body in and do something in that circumstance. So I don't think it's a problem that Arsenal have with their disciplinary record. I think ever since Arteta's gone there, you could probably argue the case that he's brought the dark arts with him a little bit more so. I think they're a little bit more street smart in terms of the way they manage the game. They make little fouls when they need to. And I do think they are a little bit smarter in that sense, and that's probably where they have had a few punishments in terms of yellows and red cards. But I don't think it's been anything ridiculous. I think you said that you were saying earlier that they've had 6 more red cards than any other team. I mean, I was saying to you, how many of them are down to Granit Xhaka over the years?
Yeah, very true. Well, yeah, since Arteta came in, that's 18 reds now, I think we said before we recorded, wasn't it? 6 more than any other, the nearest Premier League team. So, yeah, it's quite high, isn't it? And I think when a game is kind of being decided by ill discipline, I mean, Saliba had options, didn't he, when he was chasing Evan Nielsen back? And you say it's instinctive, but a defender with any kind of reading of the game should maybe just leave it to chance and leave it to the goalkeeper to maybe win a 1v1, because there's still a lot to do. And I think that's where this discussion about last man comes into play, because they were only just past the centre circle when the foul happened. So there's still a lot to do for Evan Nielsen. And I wouldn't be 100% certain that a goal would come. But I guess it's a goal scoring opportunity, and that's the issue. Saliba not reading that has cost them dearly, hasn't it? Because this game would have been so different had that not happened. And I know we can talk about missed chances for Martinelli as well, who could have, given Arsenal a much needed goal against a really difficult backdrop. But even then, it's still a lot to do, isn't it, for the team having such mistakes happen like that?
Yeah, and do you know what? I really felt that Arsenal were fully in the game for the majority up until the latter stages. They've got this know-how at the minute, how to grind results out, and you even felt there was moments in the game where they created chances for themselves, even being a man down. And I think that's the character I think that Mikel Arteta has actually managed to develop with this team, and they've got that full belief that they can still win games, even when they're really up against it. So I wouldn't really kind of look at this game with too much ill feeling, really, if I was an Arsenal fan, because it's always difficult being a man down. Obviously, I think before the game, obviously missing Saka as well. I just don't think that front line is anywhere near as good when Saka's missing from it. We were talking, saying, are they good enough to win the league with him not in the team? If he gets an injury. I'm wondering myself, to be honest, whether they are.
Yeah. Well, it was difficult to gauge from this performance, wasn't it? Because obviously Raheem Sterling was the replacement for him in this and had to be taken off, obviously, to have defensive reinforcements once Saliba went off. However, yeah, Arsenal do look a much more threatening side when he's there. And I guess what we need to find out is they brought Sterling in, obviously, on a short-term deal. Can he kind of fill that void when he's not there? It's difficult to say when this kind of game happens because I really wanted to see what kind of game Sterling could have in that attack. But yeah, they just don't look as threatening. That has to be a concern for Arteta, doesn't it?
I think so. I don't think you can read too much into this game, like you say, because they were pegged back, real early. What was it? Was it just before the half-hour mark? So I was really intrigued just to see how it worked because he's not been given too many opportunities, has he, Sterling, from the start?
Yeah.
Just to see how he will get involved in this game, but. Yeah, unfortunately, it didn't go quite the way that the Arsenal fans envisaged it. But yeah, I think he will definitely get more chances. Obviously, there's plenty of games to be played. Obviously, Europe over the next couple of weeks as well. So, obviously, Saka not there. I'm sure he'll be back sooner rather than later, though.
I think one player I have been impressed with this season is Kai Havertz, though, who had a really difficult job this game. I think he was quite isolated naturally with the way the game was going. But he's become very much like an all-round attacker now. I think he's one of the best in that position in the Premier League at the minute. So I think with him in their forward line, they have got so much to offer Arsenal. And it's been an unexpected kind of turn of fortunes for Havertz, in my opinion. I didn't expect him to kind of become as rounded a centre-forward as he is, because we even question whether he is a centre-forward. So that, for me, is a positive for Arsenal. And I know they'll look at this and go, yeah, it's dropping points against City and against Liverpool now in the title race. And it's too early, I think, to even concede. But Arsenal fans will feel like they would have to because it's their first defeat of the season. But it does feel so final in the Premier League, doesn't it, when you do drop points against a City team that are just pulling points out of the bag out of nowhere. But yeah, Havertz, I think, is something to kind of still hold their hopes on, really, when Saka's not there. He looks still quite a threatening player, doesn't he, even in a game like this?
Yeah, he's almost take on almost like a senior role. I mean, still still reasonably young player, but he almost seems quite experienced. Like, obviously, you look at his time at Chelsea, he's come through that, and he's now really in a position where he's a real fixture in that team. And I've seen quite a bit over the last week or so the role that Mikel Arteta's had to play in his development, and he's really kind of put an arm around his shoulder and almost kind of developed his ego in that side of things. I think it's really difficult in managing players these days because we look at things like, for instance, social media and things like that has a real impact on players, and I think it's difficult to switch off from those sort of things. I mean, you look at that difficult time that he had at Chelsea. I mean, like the turnaround that he's had since then. I can imagine that it is difficult for players to turn things around, but he has, and full credit to him. Like he's made a real impact in that team, and if you look at, he can do everything really in terms of offensively. He can hold the ball up really well. Can make those late runs into the box. Like, it's no surprise that he's scoring the goals that he has. And we look at his early days at Leverkusen. He was a real talent, and it's great to see him doing so well.
Bit of a word on Bournemouth, because they've had a difficult run up to now, haven't they? And they were struggling going into this game. I think lost quite a few on the bounce. I mean, they were handed a huge slice of luck, I think, but it was still a difficult team to break down. And to their credit, they did. I don't know about you, but I quite like the football that Bournemouth play. They've got a few players that I really enjoy watching. Antoine Semenyo has been really good this season as well. And some of the goals they score are really nice to watch, and they're a good team on their day. How can Bournemouth kind of kick on as well? Because I don't think they're a relegation threatened team, but I also think they're better than sort of 12th, 13th as well. And they had a difficult start last season, of course, and turn it round. This season hasn't been too kind to them either. Why do you think that is?
I think it's been a readjustment for them, hasn't it? I think obviously it's easy to say, they're missing the goals from Solanke, but I think it's really about understanding each other's games. You look at Evan Nilsson, I think he's a good talent, and he's come in and performs, for a really good FC Porto team, over the last couple of seasons, and he's come in with a lot of promise. But I think when you have all of a sudden a new talisman, which you assume he probably will be over the next couple of years, it's difficult for those around him to build that sort of understanding, and they've struggled actually to create probably and score more goals than they have done. But like you mentioned, like Semenyo's had a really good start to the season. We know how much of a threat he is, and just how well he makes he really kind of transitions from midfield into attack. So I do think it is a case of gelling, particularly that front line. But they've got options there. Obviously, Justin Kluivert, who's actually played really well when he's come in this season as well. So there's definitely, I think it's time, and we've looked at Areola, and we've loved what he's actually done with this team. And I thought they actually started the game really well, to be honest. I wouldn't put it all down to the red card. I think you've still got to go and win the game, and that's easier said than done.
Yeah, I mean, a much needed win for Bournemouth, so credit to them. And I think a much needed win in another game for Tottenham, who again have not been on the best form and quite inconsistent really this season. They beat West Ham, a really dire West Ham team, 4-1 at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And I thought when they clicked Spurs in this game, they looked like the best of the team, didn't they? And I think one player who's at the centre of that, surprisingly not James Maddison, who got taken off around the half-time mark, but actually Dejan Kulusevski. He's become such a live wire attacking threat now down that right-hand side. And I think his link-up play has been great with the players around him too. Obviously, Pedro Porro bombing past him. And he rightly took man of the match, I think, in this game too. He seems like a pretty key player for Spurs and what they do going forward on the counter at the minute, doesn't he?
Yeah, definitely. I think, he came in, didn't he, when he came in at Spurs and started really well. And everybody was blown away by him for the first. And I think he had a few injury problems over the last couple of seasons. He's been in and out of the team. But I don't think you can doubt the impact that he has on that team. And I think not just going forward, but he's an all-action player, isn't he?
His work rate's brilliant.
All over the pitch.
Yeah.
He'll get into challenges. He picks up a few yellow cards here and there, but that's what you want from especially this kind of team. And I think that's what Ange Postecoglou will love about him as a player, is that he offers so much balance to this team in terms of not just attack but defensively as well. So, but yeah, he obviously took this goal really well, and we know how much attacking talent he has, and I think we're just waiting to see a little bit more of that, because I think he's shown it in moments, but about having that consistency now. And I think particularly when players like Son are missing from that front line, and you've got young players in there still, like the likes of Brennan Johnson, who he's had such a hot streak at the moment as well. I do think they needed a place to stand up.
I think that's one of the keys to Brennan Johnson's performance so far, is having Kulusevski supporting him, because his trickery going forward to Kulusevski is great. He's got such imagination, I think, in the final third, and goes down avenues and finds ways around things, and his directness sometimes really helps the team too. And I think Johnson's been a real beneficiary of that. So, yeah, I think Kulusevski is one of those players who, even on a bad day, sort of digs deep and works hard, like you said. It's a really fans' favourite kind of player, isn't he? And I think for Solanke doing well as well, he's going to rely on service from players like him getting into the box. And I do think the best is yet to come from Spurs too as well. We haven't seen them really in a consistent run with their best players all available. Interesting to see James Maddison taken off there, wasn't it, in that midfield shuffle at half-time for Pape Sarr. But I agreed with it. I think when the first half was happening, it didn't feel like that balance that you talked about was there in midfield. And I know Maddison's a really key player for Spurs when they play sometimes, and is a lot more central when he's at his best, I think. So when he was out on the left, I feel like Spurs kind of struggled a bit. Putting Sarr in there was a real kind of great stroke from Postecoglou as well, to sort of address that balance straight away. And the difference that made to Spurs' setup really made them kick on. I don't think 4-1 in the end flattered them, do you?
No, not at all. I thought that, and particularly when you've got certain players like Son, I think they were clinical at times, although I will question some of the goalkeeping. I think probably at least two, maybe three.
Small caveat
could have done. They could have done better with that. But you look at times this season, Spurs have scored a lot of goals in games. There's no doubt in the attacking side of their game. I think they've been really clinical. But it's great to see that there's goal scorers are all over the pitch as well with them. They're all contributing, and it's not even, Solanke's not even hit his strides yet. If you obviously look in terms of numbers, you think he's going to be a marksman and come in and score the majority of the goals. I think that's the really encouraging thing, is that everybody's contributing.
Yeah, I think when you look at, just a side note as well to the goal that Kulusevski scored, I was just watching the replay of it then. It hit both posts, didn't it, before it went in? That rarely happens, but yeah, what a satisfying goal to see fly in as well. A quick word on West Ham then, because it's been an indifferent start for the Hammers. We were predicting good things for them. I think many were, because a lot of the signings they've made were standout signings, especially from an attacking point of view. And obviously, we've seen Todibo go in and done really well in defence in the last couple of games, and sort of shored up their backline, which needed to happen, because they kind of didn't have much discipline in the first few games of this season. But to lose 4-1 in London against Tottenham as well is a huge blow, a hammer blow, if you like, excuse the pun. And fans are rightly kind of wondering whether Lopategui is an upgrade on David Moyes. And you look at the success that Moyes brought to the team, and I guess you've kind of got to offer a new level of respect for what he did with what he had. What is Lopategui struggling with, do you think, with West Ham? What is it, a cultural fit, do you think? Because I was always under the impression that Lopategui was kind of the pragmatic Spanish version of David Moyes, but he's not really fashioning this group of quite talented players yet into something that's working, is he?
Yeah, I think it's difficult. I think he's. I'm not unsure if he's found his team yet, to be honest, or if he's decided on his first 11.
I guess.
Obviously, he's not had the luxury of. He's obviously a couple of injuries in there. Obviously, Fulkrug's unavailable at the moment as well. But Mikel Antonio is obviously coming in, spearheading that front line at the moment. I'm just unsure whether the balance is quite right in that team. Rodriguez has obviously started in this game over Alvarez is on the bench, and so I don't know if he's that entirely certain himself. It doesn't seem to me that balance is quite right, particularly between midfield and attack. I feel like there's a lot more potential there for me.
Agreed.
But I don't know whether I would be playing Jarrod Bowen probably up top at the minute. And look, Somerville, every time he's come on, it looks so threatening. But he doesn't seem to want to start him too much this season. And I'll probably play him over onto the left and then have Kudus onto the right.
Yeah, maybe. It's weird, isn't it, though?
Because he's played off to the right plenty of times for Ajax. So I just think, for me, they need to try something a little bit different going forward.
Well, yeah, because they've been well known under David Moyes for being a counter-attacking team, haven't they? And weirdly, I think Somerville and Fulkrug would have been the exact same players that Moyes would have wanted when he was in charge. They would have been perfect for that counter-attacking style, especially Somerville. But I think the style under Lopategui has become a lot more, I guess, patient, playing out from the back a little bit. Todibo's been quite important with that. But they were just so bad at the back, weren't they, in this game? And I think you said that calamitous, panicky defending gave them no foundation to build upon going forward. So, yeah, there was no quick transitions or anything like that. It was all just very pedestrian and lazy, I think, in some ways. Yeah, the players didn't seem to work, apart from Kudus, who I thought got frustrated, and you could see that when he got sent off.
I think the ease at which Tottenham were able to find space in behind as well, for me, is really concerning.
Yeah.
It wasn't really that difficult. It was a couple of passes. I think it was the Son goal, wasn't it? Where he travelled with the ball for about 40 yards. So and managed to get a shot away really easily on his favourite left foot. So I think you've got to question a few things in that team. And for me, there's problems defensively as well as there is going forward. And it's going to be interesting to see if Lopategui can find the answers to it, because I think there are probably a lot of West Ham fans at the minute really kind of scratching their head and just wondering what's going on.
Probably wanting the Moyes era to come back. I've seen a few tweets of them reposting the Conference League win and stuff like that, saying, remember these heady days. But it's essentially the same squad. There's not much changed apart from the playing style and the coach, which is obviously quite a big thing. But I don't think West Ham have any need to panic. I think it will come together at some point, but they just need to tighten up at the back.
There's too much quality in there. There's too much quality in there for them not to get points and win games. You've got Kudus in there. For me, I think he's easily a top 4 player. Yeah, for me.
And his frustration spilled over, didn't it? As well,
could get in. Right. Yeah, absolutely. That was ridiculous. it's just brainless, really, to be honest. I think I didn't like Van der Ven's reaction. I thought that was pathetic, if I'm honest. But yeah, it was a stupid moment from him.
Well, he sensed that, didn't he, Van der Ven? That he didn't have to do much to kind of get a reaction. And as soon as you raise your hands in the Premier League, that's it. It's going to be a sending off. And I think he did it like twice in this whole scuffle.
Well, when I saw it, I actually thought he did it to 2 players. Well, he did. I thought he did it to 3 players. But it was actually, I think, one of Tottenham's players pushed a West Ham player into pushed Kudus into Richarlison and got headbutted by him.
What are we saying about dark arts in North London? Turns out it's coming from Spurs as well. I'm going to dive straight in with a game that I expected big things of, Dave, and that was Liverpool against Chelsea, mainly because I think Chelsea are quite a fun team to watch at the minute, for good and bad. Like, when they're good, it works. It's quite nice, slick passing, and they work quite quickly on the attack. But when it doesn't work and the quality is off, like it was in this game, every attack looks really haphazard. Every defence looks really shaky, and in this game, it was a case in point. But then Liverpool weren't much better either, were they? So it was a weird game to kind of oversee, but Liverpool probably edged it in the end 2-1. You think that's fair?
The difference for me, I think Liverpool have got a match winner in Mo Salah, who produced, 3 or 4 real moments of quality in this game, which on another day probably could have another assist or 2. I thought he played really well, and he just makes that difference, doesn't he, again and again. And I thought Curtis Jones, thought he played really well in midfield.
Brilliant performance.
That's the best I've seen him play, to be honest. And I'm not his, I probably is one of his bigger critics, to be honest. I've never rated him massively, but he showed me something different, I think, in this game. I think his all-round display, I think off of the ball, really his awareness defensively, won the ball back countlessly, and I just think he put in probably a superb display. And obviously, you look at likes of Alexis McAllister came on towards the end, didn't he? Yeah. Surprising when he's not starting a game of this magnitude, because he's normally a real fixture in this team. But I think he's shown what he's all about, Jones. I think we've known that he's got a lot of ability in terms of going forward and his attacking ability. He's got a goal in him or 2, but he's, I think, a lot more in terms of off the ball. I think he showed what he's 100%. All about, and it was really impressive for me.
Well, we talk about England midfielders this week, and how there's options now for Lee Carsley and obviously Thomas Tuchel when he comes in, which we haven't even spoke about really, have we? Tuchel's appointment, but surely you'll be looking at Jones as an option now. I think that's probably the key for me to Liverpool maintaining and kind of improving what Klopp started, really, is having Jones stepping up and having Gravenberch as well next to him in midfield. It creates a whole new level of energy, doesn't it? And like you say, the class of Salah is enabled to kind of do what he does best. Some of the passes Salah was pinging forward were just unreal. He's so good at picking a player out, isn't he? And I think that's enabled by the fact that they've got someone like Jones and Gravenberch as well, who I think deserves plaudits this season so far, don't you?
I think so, yeah. I think Gravenberch, like you mentioned, has come into his own and really kicked on, I think, since he's had a little bit of a slow start. And I think that was more down to adjustment and just into this new league and, a new country. But he's really kind of starting to make himself a fixture in this team. And all of a sudden now, Liverpool, we were questioning that midfield, weren't we, I think?
Yeah.
Midway through last season and saying they need, it needs a revamp. But all of a sudden they're looking like they've got options in there. Not just options, but, real quality in depth. So that's a welcome sight, I'm sure, for them.
Absolutely.
But it wasn't, like you mentioned, it wasn't the game I think we probably envisaged for it to be, and it's a bit disappointing. I think there was a lack of quality from both sides. I didn't think it was Liverpool's best game by any means, even though they got the job done. But Chelsea just didn't do themselves any favours in this game. I thought they lacked a lot in terms of quality, creating opportunities. There was just they were just absent in terms of that. And I think a lot of that came down to just they didn't get Cole Palmer involved enough.
No.
There was a strange fascination with everything going down their left-hand side in the second half. Obviously, Pedro Neto came on for Jadon Sancho, was largely anonymous in that first half.
Yeah, it was poor.
It almost seemed like they targeted Trent in that right back role, but it didn't really seem to come to fruition, and I think that hampered them more so than it did.
Probably,
it wasn't productive enough for me, and
it was predictable, really predictable.
It was predictable, yeah, it was, and it was. Cole Palmer really is the player you want to be getting involved in these kind of games. Just didn't see the ball hardly at all. It was really, really odd, to be honest. And I don't know why, but it seemed as though they were trying to have that. For instance, their wingers, they're really hugging the touchline. So it almost seemed like they were trying to play too wide and weren't getting those players in the middle of the park involved enough to link play together. And I think that's why you saw Nicholas Jackson really kind of, he didn't really have much to go on, to be honest. And to be fair to him, he took his goal really well. But I think Chelsea were really disappointing.
Yeah, disappointing, but I think they've not beat Liverpool in 10 consecutive league games now, which is a crazy stat. Like, Liverpool have got a real hold over them. I think Liverpool will be gutted because of that defeat against Forest. If it wasn't for that, they'd have a 100% record, so that's their only blemish this season. It's remarkable, really. Like the turnaround that Arne Slot's had in my expectations of Liverpool. I know the team hasn't changed an awful lot, and I know that I thought it was just a case of settling in, but it's not just settled in. They've got a clear and different system to the way Jurgen Klopp played as well, which has surprised me. And you can tell that Slot's a coach. Fundamentally, first and foremost, he sees the parts he's got in the team and plays them in places that he thinks is going to work. That is something I didn't expect. And I guess I'm a bit dismissive of the Dutch league in that respect. Maybe it's the Ten Hag effect. Maybe it's just me thinking, Dutch managers are all the same. But his coaching style and his coaching speed as well, that he's got these players disciplined to his way of playing, has been really impressive. I'm impressed with it as a recruitment thing for Liverpool. But also the kind of manager who he is to try and fill gaps with players that aren't square pegs in round holes has been really great for them. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, we were mentioning, weren't we, over the last couple of weeks, they've had quite a kind start to the season, some of the fixtures that they've had. But, they've got the job done on this occasion. I think over the next few weeks, we'll have a better picture of where they're at, to be honest, because they've got a real difficult fixture list. I think in the next few games, particularly over the next up to Christmas, I think they've got a really unkind run of games. So it will be interesting to see where they are in and around then. Like you say, they're obviously top of the table at the minute. You can't ask for any more than that. I think pointing ahead of City, aren't they? So a great start for them. And I don't think, like you say, Liverpool fans probably wouldn't have imagined it to have gone this well.
Well, they've still got, I think, Arsenal coming up on the 27th, I think it is, of October. December the 1st, they've got City. I cannot wait to see how they stack up against them. It'll be a fascinating tactical encounter because we've known what to expect when Klopp's been against Guardiola lately, haven't we? It's been a big clash of wits, really. But Slot's going to be a complete unknown for City. But I don't doubt Guardiola will have done his homework so far and kind of thought, how can I counter this? And then Liverpool have also got Villa there in that running too, in between those two games. So the whole top four will be shaped by, I guess, how those play against each other. Fascinating to watch, really. Chelsea are fifth now, I think, aren't they? Just outside of that equation, which they'll be disappointed with, but beyond our expectations. I get the impression that this Chelsea team is getting some consistency in who's playing now, which has really helped them find an identity. But they're all so kind of young and inexperienced still that there does seem like this lacking of, I guess, know-how and streetwiseness and the dark arts and things like that other teams are kind of mastering quite nicely. I feels like Arsenal were like 3 years ago in some ways. They were just quite naive and a little bit young and a little bit rough around the edges. But this Chelsea team, like I say, I enjoy watching them. I think they're fun for good or for bad. I don't think we'll see them drop off in any way. But what do you make of Chelsea so far?
They've got a cluster of really talented young players in there. I think for me, what they lack is probably depth, or there's a lot of unknown there.
Sounds mad, doesn't it? That's saying that.
Yeah, depth, but quality in depth. I think there's a big unknown there about a lot of players, whether they're actually good enough for this level, and only time will tell. But like Nkunku, he just looks so off it for me.
Why is
like,
that?
When he comes in,
such a promising prospect. Yeah, he's flattered to deceive. I mean, he scored a few goals, but against quite weak opposition in Europe. But other than that, well off.
I just don't. Yeah, obviously this really good record, obviously over the last couple of years, and he was hyped up as being, one of the next big things. But I'm just wondering whether he's going to be good enough and really, suit this league, because he looks immobile in this game to me. He just didn't really look up to speed. So it's a strange one, like you say. I just don't think he's dynamic enough. And you look at Jadon Sancho, we were mentioning, weren't we, the other night? Some players will, perform brilliantly in certain leagues. They just haven't got... I don't think they've got that dynamic nature about their game to do it in the Premier League, because it's just a completely different pace and tempo. And I think it surprises a lot of players. We see it all the time, don't we? Sancho looked absolutely elite, world class in the Bundesliga. He's come over to England. He just looks completely off it and isn't able to influence the game as how he would like to. I don't think that's any fault of his own. I just think he probably can't do it in this league. I don't think he's as good as people make him out to be. And it's a similar sort of scenario that a lot of players find themselves in.
No, Nicholas Jackson's another one feeling it, isn't he? And I think he's getting better. I do feel like this season he's improved. But you heard it here first. Dave saying Nkunku's finished already. So, Chelsea fans get angry now. That's Dave writing him off. To be fair, they've all got like 7-year contracts, haven't they? So they've kind of got to make it work. And I think that's one thing in his favour on Nkunku, and many of the players that Chelsea are kind of got. I will say,
one player I thought played really well, and I think he's got to give him a lot of credit, because he had a horrendous injury when he came in. Romeo Lavia, I think. Yeah, true. Looks like such a talent, and I think for him to come back from that injury and perform the way he has this, a couple of occasions this season it speaks volumes of the player and the talent that he is. And I really enjoy watching him play. I think he's just brings so much to that Chelsea midfield. Which also interesting, Enzo Fernandez. You've got your record signing not able to get into the first 11. Very interesting.
Yeah, well, that's what you get when you kind of stack up so many players for so much money. You've kind of got to persist.
But also, is he the player that Maresca desires as well? Is he going to be a fixture in his team?
Yeah. I mean, Maresca's shaken things up to his liking, hasn't he? And you're right. There's a few players there that haven't really been. They've been cast aside basically because they're never going to see the light of day in the first team. Can't afford to do that with Fernandes, can you? Though, but we'll see. Interesting story to unfold at Chelsea, but always fun to watch. Another team that have been fun to watch this weekend, Dave, with another crop of young players that are looking quite promising so far, is Leicester, who grabbed a really much needed and important 3-2 win over Southampton, their relegation rivals. And I think it's kind of made them have a bit more momentum, Leicester, now, with a few players that have been finding form too. Obviously, the winner was scored by Jordan Ayew in the 98th minute, who's 38 years old or something like that. So not exactly the pillar of youth himself, but Abdul Fatawu was a game changer when he came on, and Facundo Buonanotte as well, who has scored again his third goal of the season. Both of those players look like great players for Leicester this season. And although Buonanotte's got to return to his club after this season, surely he's going to make a name for himself this season from what we've seen so far.
Yeah, he's a fan favourite already, isn't he? I know Leicester fans absolutely love him, what they've seen, and he's a player of so much quality. I think he offers a lot to that team in terms of going forward, but defensively as well, gets stuck in, and he loves a challenge. But I just think they've shown a lot of promising signs, this Leicester team, over the last few weeks. I think if you look at that Arsenal game, where they were close to getting something.
Unlucky, really, yeah.
I think to show that they've got that steel and that mentality to hang on in there and not take a thrashing, I think that shows a lot, because I think that's a question I had, to be honest, before the beginning of the season, watching them in the Championship last year. I just wondered whether they've still got that kind of experience, whether that will help them. They've obviously got that players, obviously like Whitfast, and just I think James Justin's performed really well when he's come in this season as well. But they've got a lot of young players in there as well who lack a bit of experience. But I think there's those experienced players given that guidance, and like to have a coach like Steve Cooper to be able to manage them. I think it's really helped them. And like you say, I think we wondered whether they'd score enough goals. Just all of a sudden starting to create chances. And I think what is great, actually, I think Steve Cooper's realised he's got a squad there to depend on. Like there's options. Like you can bring Fatawu to come on and put in performance like that. And to be able to get that kind of performance out of players, it shows that they're wanting to play for this coach as well.
Not only that, but I mean, the first half was a completely different game. Like Southampton went 2-0 up. I mean, the fans, you could tell how unhappy they were. 3,000 odd travelling Leicester fans, which is amazing for away support as well. Really showing their unhappiness at how Leicester performed. And Southampton looked like they could have scored loads more. And there was talk about the 9-0 that Leicester inflicted on them a couple of years back. That was never going to happen this time around. But it was an uphill battle at half time. So for Steve Cooper to kind of make the necessary changes, obviously Fatawu will get the headlines, but I thought bringing Harry Winks on as well made a real difference in midfield. Like you said, Dave, there's a good bench there, but that performance from Fatawu, what is he, 20 years old? So direct, always going down the right and cutting in, and the defenders just couldn't deal with it, could they?
No, and that was a question for me. I think with their attack, it's relatively experienced. You got Fatawu there, who's not got any real experience at this top level, and then obviously Mavididi, who again who's lacking experience really. Any Premier League experience is so it's whether they could do it at this level, and I think there's an answer there that I think they can. I think they can definitely make an impact. Whether it's always going to be difficult to maintain them sort of levels for 90 minutes, and there's going to be times throughout the season where they'll drop an absolute stinker. But I think showing and having those moments like Fatawu, he's a match winner. I feel he's got real potential to be a top player, and he'll create those moments. That shot that hit the bar would have been
gorgeous shot.
That would have probably been one of the goals of the season if that had gone in. But they've got some quite precocious talents in there, I think, and each of them offer something a little bit different. And I think they'll need that because I just think they still lack a real goal scorer. I think Jamie Vardy can only offer so much at his age, and there's only so many games he can probably play. So they're going to have their input with goals. And, we did take the mick out of the signing of Jordan Ayew a little bit in the summer, didn't we? But, I mean, he silenced a few critics with that goal. That goal.
Really smart finish as well, to be fair, from like a really smart corner routine. And to have that routine in that stage of the game, again, credit to the coaching. It paid off. So, Leicester get a great win.
I'm just amazed that shot managed to go through that sea of players that were in front of the goal.
No.
And nobody intercepted it. It was fate. That goal was happening, wasn't it?
It was. And do you know what? It leaves Leicester in a really tantalising position this week because they've got Forest on Friday, I think it is, at the King Power, which is always a massive game for Leicester. So, some kind of momentum now for Leicester, which is good to see. And they're, 14th, I think, in the league now, which, again, if they can hold on to that, is mega. So, some optimism for them. And there's quite a few big games coming up next week, Dave, for the next pod. Obviously, we've talked about the fact that Arsenal and Liverpool are playing each other, which is going to be amazing. United versus West Ham as well at the London Stadium. Could be one of them getting the sack. You never know. Could be one of those games. Anything you're looking forward to in the coming week of football, Dave?
Oh, I'm just looking forward to actually being positive about Man United after a win. Just feels like such an alien feeling, and having a little bit of positivity, I think, onto the next fixture. It might be short-lived, and to be honest, looking at how many, I don't think we've had many successive wins, to be honest, over the last couple of years.
Oh, it's so
I'm just enjoying this moment at the minute, and kind of avoiding that sea of negativity because it's so easy to get embroiled in it, as a United fan, as you'll know. But obviously, Europe is back again as well, the Champions League and Europa League. whatever else you're going to watch. But no shortage of entertainment, that's for certain.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's roll it back a bit. We've not even mentioned United, and I think we try and avoid it when it's like a win that was a comeback win, basically. But like you say, for the quality of United's goals in this game, let's give them some credit. Like Rashford had a really good game. I think some of his passes pinged forward were incredible. Took his goal so well. Garnacho took his goal so well, didn't he, from the Rashford pass, which was brilliant. Rasmus Højlund's goal as well, the little dink over the goalkeeper, like it was just beautiful. Again, great to see. I'm not sure how much of this we'll get in the next game, but it's some hope.
It's just like having that on in some form of consistency, isn't it? And just being clinical in those moments. We're not creating enough at times, and taking our chances when we do is vital, because I always feel like our back door is open. Like in moments in games, we go through spells where there's 10 or 15 minutes where we're all at sea, and teams just seem to absolutely batter us. Unfortunately, it didn't happen in this game.
Yeah.
But I think there's plenty to be positive about. Like you mentioned, Marcus Rashford, I think that's the best I've seen him play.
Much better.
In a long time. And not just, his general play, but his work ethic. I thought it was superb. He got up and down that flank and helped out in defence when he needed to. And that's something that fans have questioned a lot about him. And he's now showing that, and needs to be doing that on a regular basis, because we know how good he can be. Like you mentioned, Rasmus Højlund, I think for him now to be coming in and getting the minutes and playing 90 minutes, because he needs to get up to speed. But I thought his all-round game, and I think it was interesting what he came out after the game and mentioned that he's trying not to get to be fighting players as much, and trying to link up play. And I think that echoes a lot of what fans have said, like over the last few months. I think they say he almost tries to get into a fight with his centre back he's up against, rather than focus on the ball.
Well, I think this might be the sort of settled forward line that we have, with obviously Højlund leading the line, with supported by Rashford, Garnacho and Fernandes. That might be the best setup we have when they're all firing, because I think Garnacho played brilliantly too. He was such a threat, wasn't he? But yeah, enough talking about United's positives, because we might be brought back down to earth next week. Who knows? Will that be the case? Tune in to find out as we talk through all of next week's Premier League action. And while we're here, please do hit like, subscribe, follow on whichever channel you watch us on, listen to us on. Really helps with our growth. And leave a comment too. It's great to speak to fans, especially from some of the clubs that aren't necessarily sort of top 6, top 8 clubs too. It's always great to hear your opinions about the way the Premier League is going. But until next week, Dave, have a great one, man. See you soon, yeah?
You too. See you again.